Hi everyone, thanks for coming today. My name is Akar, I'm from Istanbul, Turkey. I've been into product management and user experience design for almost a decade now. And my special interest is in mostly find ways how to make people do stuff. And that's why I'm interested in gamification. So today I'll be talking about how gamification relates to product design, user experience, and mostly persuasion science. So let's get going. So when you see this picture of the cake, what do you think? Like, what does it remind you? How do you feel? You get hungry? Yeah. I tend to look at my belly because it gets bigger and bigger, so maybe you remembered your birthday or your wedding cake, etc. But when I look at this, the main idea in my mind is that how good of a metaphor it is to talk about complex concepts like brands, products, and user experience. So let me show you how. So imagine this, you are walking down the street, maybe with a friend. It's a sunny day like this, not too chill, not too hot, and you get this smell from the bakery. Like, you know, this smell, the moment you feel it, you get hungry. And a couple of steps later, you see this shop window, and you recognize that this is the shop your friends are sharing all over Instagram. Like, they talk about how cozy it is, how nice the icing on the cupcakes are, or the logo, typography, all this stuff, people love it. So actually, in essence, this is what a brand is. It is the unique image of an institution in people's minds. It's not about like what color you have, what typography you have, but it's also about how you present yourself, the language you are using. So then you get inside and you eat the cake. Right? What do we get when we eat the cake? Taste and satisfaction, very nice. And we get fat maybe, right, again. And what does the company, the cake shop, get when we eat the cake? They get money, but maybe it's a nice day and we had a nice time there, so they might get a positive review on Yelp or Foursquare or TripAdvisor or whatever. Or like, this is the first time we go there, so they get new customers. And as well as referral, now they have new customers. So in essence, this is what a product is. A product is an agent that delivers results both for customers and the company. So these results can be money, can be calories, but they can also be getting pleased, satisfaction, or getting referrals and new customers. So again, that's a nice metaphor, I believe, for a product. Now imagine this. It's a couple of days later, you are at work or meeting with another friend, and your friend shows that this Instagram post of yours you took in that cake shop. And he asks you, like, you look very happy there. Was everything really that great? So in that moment, you don't exactly remember everything, right? It's been a couple of days, so we are all very busy people. It's hard to remember everything, but at that moment, what our mind does is that it creates a story around what it remembers. And it mostly remembers the most fun, the best moment, the worst moment, and how you ended. So possibly you would say something like, the cake was very nice, I loved the ice cream on top of it, the place was very cozy, etc. But they didn't have enough POS machines to make payment, so that's why it takes a lot of time to make payment there. So this is what user experience is actually. It's the remainders that is left in people's minds after all these interactions happened. So as UX designers, of course, we have to cater for all steps, all interactions with customers, but we should remember that they only remember what they remember. They cannot remember all the steps. So we should be very aware that they will remember the best, worst, and the ending part of their experience. So you might be asking, where was gamification in this whole story, right? We talked about brands, products, and user experience. Well, gamification was right where it had to be. It was blended in the whole experience. It didn't come out that much. So in this metaphor, gamification would be the icing, the cream on the cake. It's blended in the experience. It's blended in the product. So we never eat the cake just for the cake itself, right? Just for the icing. We eat the cake because it's the whole cake. Its cake should be nice, its icing should be nice, and they should go well together. So let's say that you have this cake, a chocolate cake, but the icing is not suitable for it. So if these two don't match, then you wouldn't have a nice cake. And you have very different types of cake. Sometimes it can be a wedding cake, so icing is much more important. In product terms, it can be a fitness health app, so that's why gamification can be very prominent. But sometimes gamification can just be like the cream on top of a coffee. It's just there to entice people, to welcome them, and then the real experience happens with coffee. So my approach, at least, to gamification is like this. It's the icing, it's the cream, it's the frosting. It's not the real product. So we shouldn't make it more than what it is actually. It's always about the cake, but gamification helps. So let's leave the metaphor aside now and be more theoretical and practical at the same time. So if we need to define gamification, my definition would be this. Gamification is using game-like setups, some interactions which resembles games, to increase user motivation or persuade them for behaviors we want them to do. I know this is very hard to grasp at the first moment, but I'm mostly going to be talking about why it works. So I want to start with games actually. So when I ask you what a game is, what would you say? How would you describe it at least instead of defining it? Sorry? Puzzle. Puzzle is it? Yeah. What characteristics does that? Positive reinforcement, fun, storyboard. Sorry? An objective, there is a goal, there is an objective. Yes, it has all these components, right? It has an objective, it has rules, it's fun, puzzles are an example, but it's very hard to define it because we have very different games, right? We have puzzles, we have playing in the sand, it's a kind of game for children. One of the best definitions I saw is coming from a philosopher from Switzerland called Bernard Suits. He defines games as overcoming unnecessary obstacles voluntarily. I'm going to repeat because this is very, very important. Overcoming unnecessary obstacles voluntarily. Like we don't even overcome necessary obstacles, right? We don't work hard enough to get to schools we want, or we don't care about our sleep that much, but games are so powerful, they make us overcome these unnecessary obstacles. So this is very powerful. It's very good at motivating people. But if you ask why is it that good at motivating people, then I would also talk about, it's also similar to asking why should we gamify the products we have, right? So the first reason it works so well is explained by the relationship between gamification and motivation. So we all are familiar with this triangle, right? Maslow's hierarchy of needs. We then also have Daniel Pink's intrinsic motivators. Maybe you heard of him. He has a very famous TED Talk, and he explains, especially nowadays, why people are more into meaning, purpose, autonomy, and mastery. He says that we are past all these 4 levels, from physical to esteem, and now we are all about self-actualization. So to motivate people intrinsically to do stuff, we need to give them a purpose. So you can't just have a company to make money, there should be a purpose behind it, like Facebook's mission, right? Making the world more open. And you should enable people to become masters on their own domain. You can just ask them to do the same thing again and again. They should be able to get mastery. And finally, there should be some autonomy. They should be able to make decisions for themselves, freedom to make decisions, and see the end result. So then, Michael Wu shows how gamification and games on the right-hand side are linked to motivation, right? So if you want to, let's say, give people purpose, you can have quests or discovery, or you should have a epic meaning, like the bigger calling in your product. Or if you want to show people how they master something, you can have points or levels, etc. So this is the first reason why gamification works and why it motivates people. And the main topic today will be the relationship between persuasion and gamification. So I don't know if you can read, but the sign says that I can be persuaded by a logical argument. So I don't know, maybe only, are there any Germans here? No? Maybe only Germans are like that, right? They would be persuaded by logical arguments, but most of the people, I would argue all people in the world, are not like that. Like, we are more emotional beings than we are logical, analytical. So that's why the first thing we should understand, if you want to understand persuasion, is that people are predictably irrational, as Dan Ariely from Wharton School of Pennsylvania says that. So what does that mean? He says that people are irrational, so we know that they make irrational decisions, but still there are patterns that we can detect in this irrationality. So in a sense, there is a regularity in irrationality. So this is the first thing we should understand. And if we were really rational beings all the time, then we wouldn't have these kind of advertisements. So let's talk about the second one. You see how Pepsi says that people prefer Pepsi more than Coca-Cola with the image, right? But if we were rational beings, we wouldn't need to see this striking, influential image. We would just need to see this statement, which is saying that there are more Pepsi fans than Coca-Cola fans. So that's why this image works better than the statement, because we are mostly irrational. So the second thing we should understand, if you want to understand modern persuasion, is that the theory being brought to the world by B.J. Fogg. B.J. Fogg is a behavioral science legend. He's working at mostly Stanford. So he has this theory called mass interpersonal persuasion. He says that with the advancements in internet, mobile, and social networks, now the power of interpersonal persuasion, which means that people talking to each other and recommending stuff, is happening on a mass scale, right? So one example for this would be, I can only tell about this cake shop for 5-10 of friends of mine, right, if I want to talk to them. But if I can share a post online on Instagram and Facebook, not only my friends see it, but all people who see it in their feed now see that a person is liking this cake shop, so it's happening on a mass scale. Peer-to-peer interaction happening on a mass scale. So to understand persuasion much better, we need to understand technology, biology, neurology, psychology, all of these, but as BJ Fogg points out, the most important is now technology. So now we will see what MIP really is. It has 6 components, and we will also see what gamification examples there are, which is very parallel with MIP. But before moving on with the examples, I should remind that persuasion doesn't necessarily mean that we need to change people's ideas, beliefs, their belief system. In scientific jargon, at least, persuasion means to influence people's ideas, behavior, intentions. You don't need to change their beliefs, per se. One example is my father, actually. So my father is 62 years old, and he has been critical of iPhones since they first came out, because he finds them unreasonably expensive. Like, luckily, he doesn't have a problem with money. He can buy if he wants one, but he finds the price very high. But a couple of months ago, he bought an iPhone for himself. So how did this happen? For a year or so, he was talking about how his friends showing him the pictures of their grandchildren on these big iPhone screens, right? He was kind of jealous with it. And in the end, he couldn't handle it and bought an iPhone for himself. But unfortunately, he doesn't have a grandchildren yet, so that's why he still has a problem, but that's my own problem. So he still finds it expensive, right? But he just bought an iPhone. So this is what persuasion looks like without changing one person's ideas, one person's beliefs. So, as I said, MIP, Mass Interpersonal Persuasion, has 6 components, and we will look at each of them with gamification examples. But I want to remind you what MIP was again. So MIP is a theory, is a phenomenon created by BJ Fogg, and he says that now persuasion happens on a mass scale, like people are talking to each other, and it's very powerful. And he came up with this theory while he was working on Facebook. So it's very powerful, we can say. So first, he says that there should be a persuasive experience for MIP to happen. Exactly, he says that MIP builds on a persuasive experience to change attitudes and behaviors. You remember the definition of gamification we did before, right? It's about motivating people using, it's about using game-like setups to motivate people to change behavior. So both MIP and gamification is very intentional about behaviors and changing them. I would like to explain this with a comparative example. So this here is a screenshot. The one on the top is from New York City. It's a billboard to make people obey the speed limit. So it says that if you hit me at 40 miles, 70% chance I will die. If you hit me with 30 miles, 80% chance I will live. So this is a very powerful, strong message, right? It's making its point very well, and it has a very strong visual. Then there is another example. It's trying to do the same thing, make people obey the speed limit, but this is from Sweden. What Swedish people did was they created a lottery. So if you obey the speed limit, you instantly get a chance to participate in a lottery, and the prize comes from the fines who didn't obey the rule. So this way you are earning the money from the people who are violating the rule. So my question would be, which do you think is actually more influential on changing the behavior of obeying the speed limit. The second one, yeah, it's kind of obvious, but the reason behind is more important than which one. So honestly, it's hard to compare them because one of them is in America, the other one is in Sweden, so cultures are different. And New York people has different applications like creating new pedestrian roads, etc. But from a behavior science point of view, Swedish campaign is much more likely to change behavior. Why? One, it happens right at the moment of speeding. So you have this pedestrian walkway there, and you see this lottery here. So it's right at the moment. But this is just a billboard. You see it on YouTube, you see it on Facebook, etc., then you forget about it. Second, this is much more fun than the first one, obviously. And the third is very important because remember there should be a persuasive experience, and experience happens when we join, right? This is a one-way communication, you see it and it's gone, but here there is a lottery, so we get to participate and we have fun, and with this interaction, the persuasive experience happens. But you should also know that when people hear of this lottery, they started turning circles there so that they can increase their chance. I don't know if this happened or not, but I should remind you that if you have games somewhere, there will be cheaters. So you should be aware of it. The second component is that BJ Fox says that MIP relies on automated structure. Something should be automatically without people needing to intervene. So gamification by nature is all about automated structures, right? Because as we pointed out earlier, games are about rules, about goals. So this enables us to provide automated feedbacks much more easily. Anyone using Nike Fuel or something similar? So Nike Fuel is a healthy living app. It tracks your activity, and according to that, it can simply give you this way-to-go feedback by comparing your fuel points, which you earn by being active. If they are more than the points you earned yesterday, so they can tell you this feedback way to go. Nobody has to create it. Or I can give another example. This is an app called Fitwell. I got the chance to work on it. So it's an healthy living activity app as well as healthy eating. And during research, we saw that people first start very eagerly to live healthily and to diets and exercise, but in time they lose their eagerness because first our body responds very quickly, we have a better posture, we feel like we are losing weight, etc., but then it slows down. So that's why we had a lot of automated feedbacks like daily progress and the level you are in or how you are doing against your goals in the app so that people get feedback while their body is unable to provide them with feedback. Another example is Duolingo. I don't know if you use it, but it's a very, very well gamified and very well working app. It teaches you different languages. So it has all other story, but I want to focus on gamification part of it. So Duolingo takes it one step further. So with the points you earn in Duolingo, you are able to shop from their shop to get extra things like heart refill, streak freeze, or certification to prove that you know a language. So it's taking this automation one step further. Of course, you don't need gamification to provide these kind of feedbacks, but if you think in terms of gamification, it's much easier to provide these kind of automated feedbacks because it's all about, as you said, rules and automating the feedback. Third component is the one maybe we are the most familiar. BJ Fox says that we need people to invite each other, basically, to mass interpersonal persuasion to happen. And it's a very common gamification tactic, right? Invite friends and earn Dropbox space, or earn $100 on Airbnb or Flipkart. But you don't always have to give money to people to invite others. You can also give them status. So this is a screenshot from an eBay product. A guy is selling an inbox invite. Inbox is the new Gmail app, so they created another application for mails. So it's very interesting to see this, because Gmail already had 500 million users back then, right? They didn't need social distribution. What they needed adoption, because you cannot just migrate 500 million people from Gmail to inbox. So that's why they needed adoption, and they used invite-only mechanisms to create this elite group of people. And it worked so well, people were willing to pay $205 for an invitation, which is virtual, as you can see from that. I don't know if it's sold for that or not, but I read some Quora posts and where Google product managers were talking about if it was successful or not, and they were very happy with it. I need to speed up, so the fourth component is the rapid cycle. So the action and the feedback loop should be very quick in order to mass interpersonal persuasion to happen. And here we have gamification responding with the hook model. So this is a model created by Nir. He created this model by working on Snapchat, Instagram, Twitter, Facebook, all these addicting products, and he found this pattern. Let me explain with an example. So here we see how Pinterest hooks people. AI says that we need a trigger for an action we want users to accomplish. So we see something on Facebook, Twitter, or we hear something and we go to Pinterest and just scroll there, and our reward in return to this action is something interesting, right? We see something we are interested in, and that's our reward. So he says that at that moment, we should ask people to do something for ourselves, because we just rewarded them, and it's a perfect chance to ask something from them. This is called the reciprocity principle in persuasion. So if we ask people to repin or follow that person or comment on it, people are more invested in it. So the next time, they are more likely to come again and go through this loop because they already know that they are going to be rewarded. And there are a lot of examples for this. One is from Medium. So when you reach 10 recommendations, this is your reward. You get a congratulations, and they want you to invest more time by going to Medium and viewing detailed story stats. The same thing happens with Google Maps too. And Medium again does this. So I started writing on Medium, I think 4 or 5 months ago, and one day I received this email saying that I was a top writer, and I was very surprised to see this because this was a perfect example for hook again. So my reward was becoming a top writer, and the investment behavior they wanted me is to keep published stories or to share it. So the fifth component is, for MIP to happen, we need a huge social graph. It's not enough to have millions of users, you also need to connect them with each other. So not every product can have millions of users, right? One of the solutions would be having social integration so that you can use the people you are serving and their social graph. Another solution would be, let's say that you are a SaaS analytics company and if you provide Google Analytics integration, then at that moment, you are relevant to millions of people because everyone uses Google Analytics. So there are ways to reach to millions of people, but what you need to do is to connect them with each other. And gamification can help here too. So who uses Quora? It's a question and answer platform. It's the best, I would say. What they do is, when you add a question, they show you these expert people who can answer your question. So this is a genius solution. Why? One, I get my answer much faster because I ask people to answer it instead of just posting it. Two, these people, experts, feel honored, right? Because they see that people are asking them questions, so they get more motivated to answer it. And three, Quora gets great content for free. So this is an awesome, awesome solution. And it is possible because there is a mastery mechanic in Quora. People become masters of domains so that you can ask them questions. Another example is from my home country, Turkey. We have this product called Yemek Sepeti, which is delivery hero, maybe in Europe. It sends you meals from different restaurants. What it does is this. So recently they introduced this new feature called Muhtar. Muhtar in Turkish means the headman, like the guy who knows everyone in the neighborhood and who knows who does what. So you become muhtar by being engaged to Yemek Sepeti, by ordering or by reviewing restaurants or by providing feedback. So this is the first time in my 6 years of using Yemek Sepeti, I'm more interested in people than I'm interested in meals, because now I can see real people ordering real food, and I can use this social proof to make decisions, right? So my muhtar here is Alper. He is muhtar by far, like he is much better than the second guy. So I can just follow him and I can order from wherever he orders. And these two examples, Quora and Yemek Sepeti, shows that we don't need to be friends with people to interact with them. It's not the only option. By using gamification, Quora introduced cooperation and Yemek Sepeti introduced competition, and this way people started interacting with each other. And finally, measurable impact. So BJ Fox says that we need to be able to see if we are making an impact, and it should be well documented. So we are very familiar with this. Whatever we do is now recorded. So in Medium again, when you post an article, you can see how many views, reads, and recommendation it gets. Or Quora is providing the exactly same thing. And LinkedIn is also providing very detailed statistics about what your posts do, how many people is seeing them, and from where. Twitter is the same. So it's all about again, measurement. And this is all possible not only because of gamification, but again, if you are thinking in terms of games and gamification, it's much easier to provide measurable impact. So, what does all these have to do with persuasion, right? We have seen very good examples. I should remind you that BJ Fogg came up with this theory when he was working on Facebook, and it was in 2007. In 2007, there was no WhatsApp. There was no Instagram or Snapchat. Twitter, I guess, just 1 or 2 years old. So it's 10 years ago. Like, it's not like today. We are not as connected as we are. And then BJ Fogg heard that Facebook is going to launch this tool called Platform. Platform is the tool for third-party developers to develop applications or games on Facebook, right? So when he hears that, he decides to open a class, and the purpose of the class is applying these 6 components on Facebook to prove that MIP works. And these are the numbers his students reached, right? In just 10 weeks, those students, they are not application developers, they are not designers, they are just students there, reached 1 million daily users and 16 million signups in just 10 weeks. I guess 30 or 40 students. So if they can do that by using mass interpersonal persuasion components, we can do it too, and that's my message for you today. Thank you for listening to me.